Do you feel you're in the dark? Your sun is rising.
Okay, hi girlfriends. Today's question, is life a bitch? Is it? I've been going around meeting people for the last week or so, and I'm planning on keeping doing this, meeting people and asking them the question, is life perfect and awesome, or is life a bitch and a struggle? Some people tell me life is perfect and awesome. Other people tell me life's a bitch. Those people for whom that's true, don't hesitate. Now, there's a whole nother group of people who tell me both, and that's a discussion for another time. But today and this week, well, actually, for the Sunday video, it's just today, I want to focus on life is a bitch for some of us. Now, why is it that life's a bitch? I mean, what is it about life that makes it a bitch? And the first thing that I think is the case here is not being happy. Are you happy right now? See, if life's a bitch for you, you're probably not happy more times in your life than you are happy, right? And maybe when life's a bitch, it's a bitch because you're not getting the things you want from life, in your life. Now, when this goes on for a while, it leads to little hope for something better, right? You know, we begin to this is the way life is. It's a bitch. You know, it's a bitch and then you die, right? And there's little hope that it's going to get significantly better. Now, as you live in that state for a long time, life and your emotions lead to a feeling of despair. Well, what is despair? Despair is exactly what I just said a moment ago. Despair is when you are not happy with what you have, and you have very little hope or no hope, or you think you have no hope, that it's ever going to change. And that's despair. And when you live in despair, you begin to exhibit and manifest hopelessness in your life. Not just about one or two things, but about life in general. That there's just no hope of life in life. And what does that lead to? It leads to depression. A constant, persistent state of sadness, of a weight on you. Do you know what I'm talking about? You see, I know what I'm talking about because I lived it for most of my life. Now, how did you get there? And it goes back to the very first time your mother told you no. How old were you? Maybe you were 6 months old. Maybe you were 4 months old. But it goes back to that very first time when a conflict was created in your mind. A conflict between what you want and what you are being told you can have or cannot have. You see, because what you're being told sets up a belief. And now there's a conflict. And you live with that conflict. And it's okay. You know, somebody says no, and just a few moments later, I mean, you're a baby, you're a child. You bounce right back. You're happy again. You move right on. Have you ever looked at kids? Have you ever studied them a little bit? I have. This is the way it works. But what happens when a child is told no over and over again? What happens when a child is living in an environment of despair? An environment of of restraint and constantly being told, no, you cannot. Well, what happens is the child begins to forget what it's like to live happy. They forget. We forget. If I take anything out of your existence for long enough, you will begin to forget it. And if you're a little child, and I take happiness out of your life, you will forget it. And you will live your life in a state of despair, a state of depression. I'm sorry, that's that's a medical term, and there's definitions for that word depression that I'm not talking about here at all. So I'm not talking about that. I spell mine with a T. All right, depression spelled with a T instead of an S. But this is where persistent sadness comes from. Now, I'd like you to imagine something. And I notice I'm running late on time, as I always do. I want you to imagine being in total control of your emotions, so that when sadness comes upon you, you have the ability, you know exactly what to do and how to do it, to bring happiness and joy to the surface, to be flooded with happiness and joy. Imagine a life where you get the things you want way more often than not. Imagine a life where you have the knowing that when you make a decision, you know it's the right decision for you. It was the decision you were supposed to make. You can have that knowing. Imagine that life. So, how do we get from where we are, a life that sucks, where life is a bitch, to a perfect life? And the way we do this is by changing the way we think. You see, it's an issue of changing the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we act. And when we change those three things, ladies, the world changes. Reality changes. Your life changes. It's a process, which is why my program is a 12-week program. But if you want to undergo that process, and you're serious that you really want the things we just imagined, well, then contact me, because they can all be yours.